Welcome to Malcolm and We, a show heard exclusively, I like the word exclusively on malcolmpresents.com, a streaming platform heard round the world and beyond. I haven't figured out what where beyond is, but no one knows where beyond is. Anyway, and our guest is, I'm Malcolm Berman, and my co-host is Yana Larson. And today our guest is Michael DiMartino. Anyway, welcome, Michael. I'm going to have Yana do the introduction as she always does.
Thank you, Malcolm. With 30 years of experience, Michael DiMartino has tirelessly worked towards producing various events, from small cultural arts gatherings to large-scale international festivals. His passion and knowledge of world music, along with his media expertise in radio and television, has blazed a trail of inspiration across different communities and institutions, and he continues to engage and nurture the next generation of artistic talent. The Earthstock Eco Spiritual Summit is a global event focused on creating a sustainable and compassionate future for humanity. Founded by Michael, the 7-day summit features speakers, workshops, ceremonies, and music aimed at empowering individuals to activate their potential and contribute to building a new paradigm. It transcends age, gender, religion, and political orientation, uniting humanity in the pursuit of a better tomorrow. Welcome, Michael.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I really appreciated the warmth and authenticity as we all got to know each other before the broadcast. And yes, I'm definitely happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I've been sorry, Malcolm. I want
Now, in your
get
own
one.
words, what do you do? What do you say is your major objective in what you're doing?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a quick synopsis, and it will be a TikTok version under a couple of minutes long. So very quickly, I was born and raised in Connecticut, and I come from a hotel restaurant family. I went to school for hotel restaurant management and got deeply immersed in the corporate world. I worked a lot with Leona Helmsley and the Harley Hotels, but I realized you can't make everybody happy all the time, and it's a relentless industry, exhausting industry. So I transferred from hotel restaurant management into production and into the arts. When I was very young, I actually had a near-death experience at 13. I was hit by a car. So as I was going through all of this, at the same time, I was kind of having this spiritual awakening to the reality of things that weren't necessarily taught, at Catholic school or part of just kind of mainstream culture. So years later, in 1992, I became, after a 2-year project in Manhattan, I became an interfaith minister where we studied not only world religions, but psychology, metaphysics, Freud, Jung, all these types of things. And I did it as a way to have a deeper personal understanding of the human condition, but even more importantly, how people, what's the commonality, what's the common ground, what's that thing that unites us all as a humanity, as much as I embrace the incredible diversity of the many religions and traditions and cultures around the world. So fast track to 1987, it was the harmonic convergence. I was on my way to play with Baba Olatunji and the Grateful Dead in Telluride, Colorado. And on the way, I stopped at the Hopi Indian Reservation and met grandfather David Manunge and learned about the Hopi prophecies. It was also the time of the snake dance. And I really had this kind of aha moment where my whole life changed. So fast track again from 1987 to 1992, being ordained as an interfaith minister, attending the Earth Summit put on by the United Nations in Brazil, which is a global gathering of most of the countries in the world to look at and take on solutions regarding all the things that were happening around, climate change, sustainability, earth changes, hunger, water, food security, all these types of things. So we did that in 1992. After that, I organized the World Unity Festival in 1994 in Flagstaff, Arizona. A lot of the original musicians kind of from the Woodstock generation, but and people like Richie Havens and who's departed now, and many other luminaries. but the idea was to bring in some of the baby boomer generation, the whole message of the zeitgeist of time, of the anti-war movement, the peace movement, the back to the land movement, the American Indian movement, human rights, civil rights, an explosion of consciousness and arts, all these things that were happening as this kind of new evolutionary way to look at the world. We incorporated some of that into the event in '94, but we didn't realize that 20,000 people were going to attend. So we felt like we really hit on the nerve that people were looking for the connection, the commonality in the human condition, which parlayed into a whole series of events in 1999 in Egypt. We did a millennial festival at the Great Pyramids, 2005, the Imagine Peace Festival with the United Nations and Yoko Ono, with the World Peace and Prayer Society. And then 2012, a big event in Chichen Itza, Mexico, in the Yucatan. A lot of people knew 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world, but it was, it's the ending of a Mayan calendar in that cultural tradition. So fast forwarding again, I'd been doing an Earthstock Festival for a few years, which was, again, eco-spirituality, like human development, quality of life, but also looking at our relationship with the natural world. 2020, we were planning a large event. The pandemic happened. We shut down. So we parlayed that into a Earthstock Foundation organization. And now 4 years later, we're doing a very modest event called the Earthstock Summit in Crestone, Colorado, with a capacity of up to about 400 to 500 people. It's a 7-day event, August 19th to 25th. And the whole idea is about regenerative solutions, human beings regenerating ourselves, better quality of life, and our relationship to the natural world, and hopefully having a more harmonious, more peaceful way of being. It's hard to kind of see that right now looking at the world, but nonetheless, there's, millions of people around the world that are waking up to this, what we call the regenaissance, this regenesis, this awakening of, like, I think we have to do some things differently. The old paradigm is collapsing. What can we do and how can we innovate to create a better world for ourselves and our families and the planet?
Right. I think what I would say in my old days is from your mouth to God's ears. Because
Wow.
I look at the planet in general, and the world, and it's very depressing. And but I'm happy there are people like you who see the light at the end of the tunnel, which obviously you do.
That's what I was going to start to say when we were talking on top of each other for a moment there. First of all, I want to say, Michael, I was also born in Connecticut. So, not interesting. But I was going to also say that I've been going to the Peace Through Unity meetings on Wednesday night, and that's when I saw you and thought, oh, we need to get him on Malcolm and We. And then my friend Andrew, who's also been on the show, knows you. And how does Andrew Kane know you?
Well, it's interesting, because Connecticut, just to go back for a second, is the Constitution state, right?
Yeah.
And actually, the Constitution was adapted from the Iroquois Confederacy, the Great Law of Peace. So it was actually an indigenous document that the founding fathers used to draft the Constitution. Unfortunately, they changed a few things in it, like the importance of the role of women and grandmothers and elders, going more to an indigenous model. But I know Andrew back from New York. I did the Imagine Peace Festival in 2005 in Armenia, New York, up at the World Peace and Prayer Society. I've also worked with people like Rick Ulfik and We the World and
He's
others.
my
And of course,
boss. He's my boss.
yeah,
With We the World. That's how I know.
yeah, and Andrew does Earth Day. So just being
Yeah.
in the community. I did several events actually in Battery Park. Strangely enough, we did an event in Battery Park. Of course, the backdrop of the stage was the Twin Towers. A week before 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And we used to do events up in Inwood Hill Park too, where the Dutch bought Manhattan from the natives, I think, for a couple dollars and a few trinkets. But just being in the community in New York, being in the peace movement, being an educator, advocate, and sometimes activist, depending on the situation.
Is
Yeah.
Inwood Park where they have the well, I'm forgetting the name of the monastery.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the name of that because I used to do that I went to CCNY, which is up in Harlem. And sometimes when I had, a 2 hour break, I take the train and I'd go to Inwood Park and go to the monastery. They had a great little place where the sun would come in through the windows, and I'm into transcendental meditation. And I would sit down there and meditate, and it was beautiful. And in parts of it, you could be overlooking the Hudson River.
Yeah, Rick
Yeah,
is talking
that's
about that.
one of the last old growth trees in Manhattan are there.
Yeah, we used to go. I remember geology course. We used to go to the Manhattan schist. We would go over at the cliffs by the sea and look at the formation of rocks.
Absolutely, that's an incredible overlook. That's actually why we did our event there, because it was also the site where supposedly the Dutch had bought Manhattan. But it's also a sacred site for many of the Six Nation people of that area. I just recently had a conversation with Chief Dwayne Perry, who lives up the Hudson a little bit, and it's definitely it's a sacred place. It's got its own thing happening, which is interesting because part of Earthstock is connecting solutionaries, visionaries, wisdom keepers, indigenous communities, even people who work. We call it full spectrum regenerative design because if you think about it, if we look back at people who are either in the peace movement or maybe they work with green technology, maybe they're people who work with health and wellness, or people like yourselves that work in media, people who are doing things with arts and culture. Typically there's not a lot of bleed through, but part of what makes Earthstock uniquely different is we're inviting people from all areas of society and life and expertise, or in the age of superheroes, let's say we're calling everyone forward with their superpowers to weave together, to work together to bring these solutions forward. Of course, we start first with human beings. How can we have a better quality of life? How can we be healthier? And there's also a lot of new information and technology about how to do that outside of maybe traditional allopathic medicine. There's Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, we have herbology. Even the yoga movement has exploded really since the 60s. So we start with the person, spirit, mind, body health, but also how does that extend to your home? How does that extend to your community? How does that extend to the planet? And most importantly, how do we all get along? We all, I embrace diversity, but when it comes to, wars and some of the things that we're seeing over the last few years, it's really, like you said, it's depressing and discouraging to see the level of divisiveness, and people want to fight about their views and opinions. But above all, we're trying to find some commonality in the human condition with Earthstock. Like, hey, don't we all want clean air, clean water? Don't we all want to protect our children, have a quality of life, and make sure that the Earth's around for our grandchildren to enjoy? So it's very, I'm from Connecticut. It's very like salt of the earth, very nuts and bolts, practical event. There's definitely some spirituality and esoteric things, but we're really all about solutions and solutionaries and bringing their voices to the world.
Yeah, the thing which I get concerned about, the more that I'm doing shows sort of like this in communications and speaking to people, is the climate change. I mean, people are going to exist. Are going to exist, but will the planet be inhabitable? It's like Elon Musk has the solution. Let's move out of the Earth, because soon we won't be able to live here unless we put it under some sort of dome.
Hmm.
Well, unfortunately, I'll go ahead.
Now continue.
You're going to say something.
Uh,
So I just wanted to mention I'm not a person who's against technology. We can't go back to the Stone Age and live in caves, but there's such a thing that we call appropriate, which is now called green technology. We have ways to remediate and regenerate water, soil. We know that there's a lot of films out. The environment has just been degraded. Food has lost its nutritional value. So there are technologies. We even have access to free energy. But unfortunately, if you knew about Tesla, a lot of this technology has been suppressed by large companies who just basically want to put profit over people. So, again, I'm not like anti-technology. I'm not anti-corporations. I'm anti-ignorance, and I'm anti people who are destroying the planet and humanity for the sense of putting a few more $billion in their pocket. And that goes across many different areas: the petroleum industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military industrial complex. So again, these are all and
Yes,
alternative technologies and alternative ways to do things. Just that a lot of it has been suppressed by the power structure that, again, is putting profit over people and making billions and trillions of dollars using these things. Imagine if we had free energy right now and we didn't have to use petroleum. We could use the magnetics of the planet. We could use wind and solar. I mean, and again, and this is just one small area. There's new health technologies out there. There's things that, I mean, regenerative agriculture. How do we restore the soil that food's nutritional? And when food is more nutritional and organic and healthy, how can that help suppress a lot of the cancer? I mean, my father and my brother died of cancer. So, I've definitely seen the results of just going in the wrong direction in so many ways. So Earthstock.
Actually, we're going in the right direction. The problem is the people who control the old direction don't want to give it up. There are things out there that we can, whether it be electric vehicles, solar energy, versus, which I don't want to get politically, but it's not like, let's dig, dig, dig. We want more oil, more coal. These are the things that scientifically are things that is causing a lot of the problems with the atmosphere and in our world. And we could have all that energy, but not the same way, but not from the same sources as we've always had it.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because that's why with Earthstock, I'm working with one of the co-founders of Earth Day, and over the last few years of working together, he talks about sustainability, but we've known about sustainability. Well, if you look back to the 60s and 70s, right, people were talking about this. If you look even back further, ancient cultures were stewarding the planet in a very ecologically conscious way. So the idea is that right now, because of accelerated climate change, whether you believe it's created by human beings, whether you believe it's a natural cycle, I'm not here to debate science and the threads and people's beliefs, but we here in Northern California, we've just been through 2 weeks of 105 to 111 degrees every day. I mean, this is uncharted, record-breaking territory that we're in. So I don't know how people can deny climate change, but regardless, these things are happening. If we want to get stuck in the weeds and debate things, that's fine, but people are still suffering. Things are still collapsing. So the whole idea with Earthstock is about regenerative solutions. Let's take what doesn't work, let's compost it, let's find what works, and let's innovate and find new solutions, and let's implement these again for people, planet, and the future, which is kind of what we do with our Earthstock foundation. So part of that is letting the last gasp of the old broken ways have their gasp. And we can see that right now. The rhetoric is being ramped up. Everything is changing right now, politically, economically, culturally, spiritually. I mean, there's religious wars, there's military coups. So it's kind of like this crescendo of this last gasp of control. But like you said, a lot of us are learning to just, like Buckminster Fuller said, don't fight the old paradigm. Don't fight what doesn't work. Create an alternative. And that's what we're trying to do.
Right. I have a show on, it's an audio show called Many Shades of Green, which you should take a listen to, because we're talking exactly what you're talking about. We talk about exactly what you're talking about. It's basically, how do you get the new technology and stop ruining what's happening, and not keep on doing the same old things, which we found out doesn't work and it's ruining our planet.
Well, you know why that is, probably, right?
Tell me.
Well, a lot of the patents and technology are bought by competitors or bought by the oil, pharmaceutical, military, whatever companies that want to not have competition. it's pretty sexy and appealing if I have a new technology and someone says, oh, instead of releasing it to the world, we're going to pay you, $150 million right now, and then it ends up shelved, gathering dust. I literally, there was a film that came out years ago by Foster Gamble, who actually was part of our big event in Mexico for 2012 as we celebrated the end of the old calendar, the beginning of the new one. And of course, recently, astrologically, we're now in the age of Aquarius, right? We all know the song.
I know.
But,
I was a product of the late 60s, early 70s.
right. It was I mean, as naive time as it was also an amazing time where we had a whole sense of different values. It was really but I think, just to complete my thought, was that a lot of the technology is shelved. Foster Gamble put out a film, Thrive, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, about all the technologies, electromagnetism, sound, but the problem is, I'll just say this, just look at the list of people who had cures for cancer. The 200 or 300 homeopathic and naturopathic doctors, and look where they are now. They're certainly not walking around on the planet.
Well, I don't know if you've listened to the how involved you were politically, but they had where Donald Trump accepted the nomination for the Republican Party for the presidency, and as part of his address yesterday, he promised that he's going to cure cancer and Alzheimer, among other things. And then he has it up and he says, and we're going to drill.
Well, this is the paradox. Anyone can be popular when you tell everybody what they want to hear. Right. The reality is, does your actions meet your mouth? And I will say, I used to work with Ralph Nader, consumer protection. I did door-to-door lobbying. We helped create super funds to clean up toxic waste. I mean, in Connecticut, we found out part of the reason my father and brother died of cancer, because a lot of the homes that that were built by the developer were built right in the region of a Superfund site, and they used a lot of the toxic soil from where they were dumping chemicals to build the foundations for a lot of the homes. So again, profit over people. How much money do people need to make until we start actually caring? Part of what we're going to do at Earthstock, we have a couple of people that work with people like Bruce Lipton and others. They talk about heart coherence. We've been all taught that intelligence comes from the brain, but they know now through science that the heart has its own brain, and true intelligence comes from the heart. It comes from compassion. It comes from empathy. It comes from the ability to feel what's real, not just the ability to rationalize with our brain or regurgitate information and facts. Now, I'm not saying the brain isn't important, but part of the challenge of humanity, and this is why we look towards traditional wisdom of a lot of indigenous cultures and spiritual traditions, because the head and the heart were unified. They work together. It's like putting the hands together in the symbol of a prayer. They come together, they work unified. And part of the issue right now, again, there was a white buffalo just born in Yosemite, Yellowstone. Yeah. The white buffalo for the Lakota, Dakota, and many tribal people is the returning of the feminine, the divine feminine energy. And that might sound a little woo-woo, but the idea is, I call it the Eurocentric, colonial, extractive, hyper capitalistic patriarchy has decimated humanity. They've decimated the planet. I mean, just look at the companies in the opioid crisis. How many billions and trillions of dollars were made, and the injury and unregulated of what they did. And now there's the fallout of what we're dealing with that. So, but again, we live in a culture where the corporations aren't people. There's no accountability, and it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the return of an investment. So I tend not to get too political, because as soon as I get political, people want to go to battle. I mean, you're literally about to have a civil war about it. But the point is, I'm the one trying to say, well, what's the common ground here? Okay. Whatever your religious background, your tradition, belief, you don't believe, you're an agnostic, you're an atheist, you're a pagan, you're Christian, you're Buddhist, you're Hindu, you're Jewish. None of that matters to me. We're a humanity. And the reality is, because of our lack of our ability to work together, we're destroying each other and we're destroying the planet. So I'm here, and not a naive way, oh, peace and love, everybody. Let's have a fire and sing kumbaya. It's like, no, we're talking about bringing technologies forward, bringing solutions, bringing visionaries, innovators forward that can help the human condition. Unfortunately, most people I find right now, especially after the pandemic, we had 4 years for people to like kind of look at their life and reprioritize. And I also want to just send my condolences to anyone who might have lost family members or people at that time. And, you know, a lot of us suffered. There was a lot of alienation, but it somehow, that couple of years of that time, it gave people an opportunity to reevaluate, to slow down. And what we found during that time, when people stopped polluting and doing all of these things and billions of cars, actually the planet did start to regenerate. Oceans, coral reefs were coming back, fish populations, wildlife, because human beings stopped their destructive behavior towards the natural world. Now the world's starting up again, and it's like, it seems like we have this passion to drive even faster towards a brick wall of
Yeah,
self-destruction.
that's amazing. I know, I agree. It's just like some good things came out of it, like, for example, being able to do this, Zoom, bringing people together from different parts of the world. And so, you know, some good things, but really, it's like we're just like you say, running even faster towards ruining everything again. Except there are still a lot of people out there like you, doing good things, and we don't hear about it as much as we should and could. So
Well,
Well,
the thing is, you articulate a lot of the things which I think, which I feel. But there's one thing I don't know why I thought about it, but I remember, I think it was like in the 80s or 90s, I was studying intuition. And in fact, they had a whole
intuition.
course, I think, in the University of Texas or at some of the university, where if you trust your intuition, that's the best lead. But you have
Yep,
to get in touch with it. You have to feel it.
what
I agree.
again? It's interesting you say that. Go ahead if you wanted to say something, Jana.
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, intuition, I mean, you typically correlate that with feminine wisdom and energies. So, yay.
Well, it's interesting because some of the people presenting at the event are talking about the idea of, you know, one of the presenters talks about toxic masculine versus divine masculine. And again, that might sound like, oh, divine masculine, it's so woo woo. And like, am I gay now or something? And it's like, so the point is that, you know, there's toxic masculine, there's toxic feminine, there's divine feminine, divine masculine. These are the, and it's not about gender, it's about attributes of human beings. So the point is, you know, typically we think of the feminine, maternal, compassionate, nurturing.
Nurturing.
Yeah, exactly. And then we think about the masculine, like, you know, leadership and the hunters and gatherers. I mean, if you look all the way to history, right? And now there's a certain spiritual androgyny that's happening. It's like, no, women can be leaders, and women can be a president, and women can be a chief, and women can do this, and you know,
What a novel
and you
thought.
know, I was actually, for a couple of years when I've had my children, my wife was working as a teacher, so I took care of the kids, and I was a homemaker, although I did music and I worked part-time at the university. But it's like, you know, I'm not talking about uh, uh, physical gender. I'm talking about these attributes and roles of how people do things. But right now, again, with the birth of the white buffalo, we're being asked to take on a more compassionate, more maternal aspect, and not have this, like, you know, I come from, my father's Italian. So, you know, part of my history, you know, I understand Roman gladiatorship, like go out and conquer for it, and, you know, and part of my family in Italy, people don't know, they actually, at one point, they were, many people were interbreeding, and because of the Viking presence there. So I understand that whole the masculine, go out and conquer, but we also see things of what came out to light a few years ago with the Me Too movement. And I have two daughters. The horrific mistreatment and abuse to women. I mean, I look at the statistics, and it's horrifying. So part of, it's not just the environment and ecology. Part of this whole regeneissance that we're going through, part of this whole regenerative solution is how can men and women find a balance to relate to each other in a healthy way. It's hard. We live in a culture here in America where everything is hypersexualized, right?
Yeah,
So you go to a billboard and it's all like women and again, hypersexuality, and then men, everything is like tough men and working on cars, and
well, the thing that I object to is that we talk about the maternal instinct, but we don't really focus on the paternal instinct. Because I know I had kids later in life, and I was more protective of them than I think my wife was. I was more concerned about them growing up, and now they're in the late 20s, and I'm still the same way. I'm concerned and I'm protective. Is that maternal? No, it's paternal. But
It's nurturing, it's caring. It doesn't have to be
melds in.
maternal or paternal.
But again, I always tell the difference between men and women. The women are supposed to cook, clean, and do the things and stay in the house, and the men protect the house. Like I always told my wife, we were never attacked by lions and tigers. I protected the house.
Right.
Wow.
Well, what's interesting is there's definitely been traditional roles, and there's definitely different ways of that. But I want to acknowledge what you said, Malcolm, because there are paternal instincts, and I want to go back to what you said about intuition. We all have intuition because we have billions of nerve cells in our bodies. We all feel energy. We all feel frequency. I mean, there's a whole area now of frequency medicine. If you look at a thing called cymatics, you can put a plate on a speaker, you can fill it with sand and turn the music on, and the sand will structure itself because of the frequency of the music.
Michael, so, I hate to interrupt you, but our half hour is up. It's amazing.
Oh, no.
But we like to have you on again, definitely. And as
what? It would be cool if Michael could come back after the your event and let us know how it went.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank y'all. And again, if people want more information, earthstocksummit.com. Our email, earthstockfestival@gmail. And again, we're going to be broadcasting the event. So if you can't come to Colorado, you can watch it online. You can go there, and the time just flew by. We had lots of fun.
Yeah. Well, so as I mentioned before pre-show, what we can do is if you have the events recorded, I could put it on malcolmpresents.com.
Ooh.
Amazing.
So again, you get together with Ayana, and let's see if we could work together through the years.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. And I have to say goodbye. You're listening to Malcolm.
Now, what are we listening to?
Malcolm Present. I get tongue-tied. Yeah. I need someone to MC the show aside from me. Anyway, thanks again, and stay tuned for a show next week. Who I don't know.
Great.
Do we know who's on next week?
Yes, it's going to be our man in Africa, Robert Mwesije, wants to come back and talk about what he's doing with agroforestry.
Our man in Africa.
Rejoice Africa. I know Robert. I know Robert. He's part of Earthstock. So see, we're all connected.
Okay, guys.
Cool.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next week, or you guys next week. Bye.